What's going on, golf addicts? DB here with another course breakdown video. This week, it's Waialae Country Club, and it's the host of the Sony Open. We got a really strong field this year. A lot of good players coming over from Kapalua with a little bit larger field, so I think that's helped things at the Sony. It's going to be a good week, and I'm going to do a screen share here on Bet the Number. We're going to look at the golf course page, look at the data, kind of start to understand who does well here, who doesn't, what type of player does well at Waialae Country Club. And then we're going to open up the custom model on BTN, the proprietary BTN custom model for the Sony and for Waialae to see what they're saying behind the scenes there at BTN. So before we do, let me just talk through a couple of things about this golf course. It is Waialae. It's in Honolulu, so we're not on Maui this time. Old Seth Rayner design with a Tom Doak restoration back a few years ago. It's a par 70, usually plays around 7,050 to so yards, something like that. So not one of the longer courses on tour, one of the shortest, in fact. Water does come into play on about 4 or 5 holes, depending on tee setups and stuff like that. Bermuda grass, average fairway width is around 34 yards, much different from Kapalua. The rough is Bermuda, usually measures 2.5 to 3 inches. And you've got obviously Bermuda grass on the greens. Usually they keep them a little slower, just like Kapalua. There are some undulations, and you've obviously got the wind as the main defense at this course. It's one of the easier courses on tour, especially if the wind doesn't blow, obviously because it's so short. So yeah, it can be a birdie fest if there's no wind. So we got to check conditions. Obviously, that's going to be really important. And the folks at BTN that create the model will adjust if the weather is looking to be different than just your average scoring conditions, mild conditions. That will be the model will be adjusted, and you'll be notified if you're on the screen at BTN and need to refresh it once the model has been changed. So I'm going to show the model here in a second, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't change if the weather if the weather starts looking interesting. Even though there's water on a few holes, there's not a lot of penalty shots here. It's a standard par 70. You've got four par fives. They're all pretty easy. Sorry, 2 par fives. They're both really, really gettable. One of them borderline shouldn't even be a par 5 on the PGA Tour. And you've got some pretty short par 4s for the most part. The par 4s are gettable as well. The par 3s are really the toughest holes on the course. But it's usually a mid to short iron contest along with putting. So let's talk about off the tee first. I mean, driving accuracy is certainly a little bit more of a thing here than it was at Kapalua the previous week. The rough penalty is a little higher than average at Waialae. And a lot of that is because we find in talking with folks who we know that play this golf course and caddy this golf course every year, this is one of those places where the Bermuda rough, you do catch flyers. There's plenty of Bermuda rough on tour where you don't really, but you catch them here. And obviously when you catch a flyer, the ball's unpredictable. It bounces or it knuckles or it rolls out more than you think it can. It can be harder to predict. So there is a little bit more of a penalty than tour average by being in the rough here at Waialae. And distance is it's a little bit irrelevant. We're going to look at the bomb opportunity stat on Bet the Number. It just doesn't. Distance is not a requirement, and it's not much of a major benefit here. So yeah, there's not really a big reward for being like super long and you don't even have, but you also don't even have to be like freakishly accurate because the rough is tougher, like I said, but in spots. We'll get to more on that later. The fairways hit percentage averages between 56 and 61% if you look over the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years here at Waialae. In terms of approach play, you got a higher than average green and regulation rate, usually between 68, 72%. And that's just a touch higher than maybe tour average. The greens, people are going to say that the greens aren't very small, and by surface area, they're not. However, the belief I know from the folks behind the scenes at BTN is that the greens actually play much smaller because of some undulations and some spots, some tricky angles, or if you are playing out of the rough and you're catching flyers and the ball's bouncing, harder to predict. It does make these greens play smaller. So we'll notice that on the course page here in a second. They actually have it filtered down to small greens. You have one approach shot a day, basically over 225 yards. So, I mean, there you go right there. It's not a long iron contest. You don't have to be super long. Tons of wedges and mid irons, like I said. Scoring matters here, so you got to be able to make opportunities for yourself by hitting it close. Approach play, really being dialed and being above average with your irons is um, is the path of least resistance over like hooping everything with the putter, which we have seen that get it done too. Chipping around the green is fairly easy here, at least statistically, that's what it says, but it's also not super necessary given the high green irregulation percentage. I did notice in the model we're going to look at ahead of time, it is included in the model, but it's got a pretty low weight. So around, and that could change again if the wind kicks up. Even though the greens have changed over the years, they're still pretty undulating with character, and in perfect conditions, it can turn into a kind of a putting contest. Over the past few years, we collect some caddy thoughts on this golf course, and the overall thoughts are greens are small in spots and firm to hit into. Bombers will be clubbing down on holes. Being able to flight the ball in the wind is obviously nice, and they say course history definitely matters around here. Having some understanding of how these key holes play and the better angles of attack does matter at Waialae. Let me see. I do have one more kind of nugget I'll share when we get into the custom model that we got. Past winners here, our boy, our heart, sweet South Korean prince, Siwoo Kim, is our defending champion. So I'm excited about that. All right, let me share my screen. Let's get into the course page to start. Actually, if you haven't joined Bet the Number, you can go to betthenumbergolf.com and you'll come to this landing page here. Talk to you about what you can do, how we see this thing working for you, and some features, some pricing options as well. But you can use code TJ when you sign up for $5 off a month or $50 off annually if you choose that. And if you're a member in the Discord, as always, you can DM me. I can give you a one-time unique code if you're a paying Discord subscriber. That will be the largest discount to Bet the Number that anyone can get anywhere. It's larger than the family discounts that the owners of Bet the Number are giving. All right, let's take a look at the golf course. So we got Waialae Country Club. On the filtering here, I did filter it out to the last 5 years. Normally it defaults to 3. I went ahead and added the 2020 and 2019. Get a little bit larger view here. Basic stats up here. You can kind of see it's pretty much an average course, compared to tour average, or easier compared to tour average in basically every one of these categories. Especially if you look at par 5 scoring. I mean, this is the tour average is 4.64, and you got 4.36 here. That's really where a lot of strokes, get a lot of holes get those par 5s get taken advantage of by these guys for sure. Again, I want small greens is what we're labeling it because of how it's playing, and then Bermuda grass. If we look at the top past performers, I've got this sorted to winners right now. So Siwoo, Hideki, Kevin Na, Cam Smith, and Matt Kuchar, and you can see a lot of dark green in the approach and putting category, which is basically what I was talking about here. Hard to separate yourself off the tee. Strokes in around the green, not as required given the high green irregulation percentage. If we expand that out to top 5s over the last 5 years, see a lot of the same thing. A lot of dark green in the strokes gained approach, and a lot of mint and dark green in the strokes gained putting category. Not a lot in around the green and off the tee. Again, I like to look at this kind of zoomed out, big picture. Let me see the colors, because it does tell a story when you start to look at it, like in this format. All right, let's look at the course breakdown here. The driving cart. So yeah, definitely not a bomber's paradise. 5.5 out of 10 rated by Bet the Number. 10 driver holes potentially at this golf course. 10 out of the 14 driver holes here on this golf course. Now, there is some bomb opportunity if you're 20 yards longer than average. They have it at almost 1.6 strokes per round if you're 20 yards longer than average. And that's obviously also if you're willing to be super aggressive, which that can kind of be player by player. Short penalty if you're 10 to 25 yards shorter than average is around 1 stroke per round. A little bit of a penalty there. So we don't want short hitters, but average to slightly longer would be fine. The approach shot distribution here really tells a lot of the story. Most of the approach shots also coming from the fairway, but definitely some coming from the rough, more so than we saw at Kapalua. And you'll see here in the custom model that we've got some strokes gained approach buckets slotted out based on fairway and tee and rough. So proportionately filtered there in the custom model. But, definitely you can see, 6.1, 8.1, 8.5 shots between 126 and 175 from all surfaces. And let's see, 5.6, basically 6 shots. So 14 of your approach shots are going to come from these from those ranges, the 126 to 225 range. Around the green distribution, again, not a course where I think this matters as much because around the green doesn't seem to matter, but it's a little bit just like everything else is like basically tour average or easier than tour average in terms of difficulty. That's what this strokes gained remaining in the different yardage buckets and surfaces basically says. If you hover over those, it shows you, what this course averages in terms of shots remaining versus the tour. All these are easier than the tour. Same thing here, pretty much. Yeah. Well, except for the fringe, it's basically the same. So, basically tour average or a little bit easier in the around the green distribution. And you get a mixed bag here between bunkers, rough, and fairway chipping. So nothing that can be really overwhelming in the in the filtering, but that's your around the green stuff. And I don't really see a whole lot of interesting things here in the putting, except for like ideally this graph in terms of putting length distribution should be like constantly going down here, and you do have outliers here with the 21 to 30 foot range getting a slight jump over that trend. um, so you got a lot of putts in this range here, kind of right in here. But the make percentage, I went ahead and looked at this ahead of time. The make percentages versus tour average are all right on cue. So not super, not more difficult, not more easy than most greens that we're putting on every single week. All right, let's open up the custom model and we will get out of here. Before I do that, if you've not already joined Bet the Number, like I said, there's a link in the description. Same link I showed you earlier. Code TJ gets you the $5 off monthly, 50 off annual. The Discord membership gets you a greater discount, but you got to DM me for that. And you can also just scan this QR code if you're watching on YouTube. Scan the QR code; it'll take you right to the Bet the Number site. All right, here we go. Let's look at the custom model. I haven't really done a whole lot of looking at this yet. Let's see what the BTN folks behind the scenes see. Let's see what they think about this week's event. And now the field is loaded in. This field is straight from the PGA Tour, so it is loaded in already. There might be some withdrawals, but probably not. I noticed Will Zalatoris is in the field. Interesting. Let's look at the filters first. So I click here, and here we go. So the global filter that they've applied is 40 rounds. Looking back 40 rounds, no other filters there. Strokes gain off the tee per round, 20% weight. No additional filter there. So that's last 40 rounds. Strokes gain approach per round versus the field, 15%. No additional filters. Now we've got our first additional filter. Strokes gain around the green, 10% weight. Last 40 rounds, filtered to 29 courses. I would imagine that those filters are based on grass type or difficulty or something like that. You could click in there and look at that, but I don't want to do that in this video. It's too much time. Strokes gained putting per round, 15% putting contest, right? It's a little bit higher. I think there's another putting stat coming. So the putting is going to get a weight here. And I would imagine it stays that way unless wind starts to look projected and things kind of change on the golf course. Last 30 rounds there. So a little bit more recent. That one's also filtered. This is interesting. So I told you I had one more nugget for you. Left rough tendency. Now, I was told that on this golf course that there are, the rough penalties off the fairway are somewhat above average in terms of rough penalty. But the nugget that we got is that left misses can really hurt on some of the key par fours off the tee here. So if you're gonna have a miss on some of those par fours, the right miss is better. So a little bit of weight there. I mean, 7%, little bit of weight given by the BTN model. That's interesting. Strokes gain approach, some more filtering here per round, another 8%. Strokes gain approach, and now we've got so if you add up all the strokes gain approaches, that's obviously a big chunk of this 100%. But some additional filtering here done by BTN, and that is between 85 and 175 yards from the tee and the fairway. So that's the approaches from tee and fairway, and now you have the same thing done here, a little bit lower weight, okay, between 100 and 185 in the rough last 40 rounds. And there's some filtering there. I would imagine Bermuda rough is the filtering done to that one. So you can see really how granular you can get here in doing this model. And then another putting stat. So that puts putting weight, total putting weight at, let's see, 25%, which is interesting. So 10% weight here, last 40 rounds. And they're assigning a 8 to 20 feet range, 8 to 20 foot range. A lot of putts going to be made in that spot. So before we get out of here, let's just take a look at a few interesting names here. I'm going to do it by rankings. You could also sort it by BTN score or raw values if you wanted to look at it, but let's just do rankings. This is sorted by the model rank. Ludwig is number one, which I can't believe. I guess because the strokes getting off the tee gets a lot of weight. Obviously, you can see his left rough tendency isn't great here, but it's a limited sample size, and he doesn't even have enough or any data to hit that. That's probably one of the ones filtered by Bermuda Rough, I would imagine, and he might not have enough. So I don't know. That one's interesting. Ludwig's kind of interesting. Svensson, what's Svensson done here? T7 in 2022. Look at the ball striking, which is kind of the name of the game for him. It usually does come down to his putter. Be interesting to see how he putts here at Kapalua this week. Lucas Glover rated pretty high. He's also had a top 5 finish here in 2022. Again, look at those strokes gained approach numbers. That's incredible. I think he's putting poorly at Kapalua right now, though. Russell Henley, God, he's been frustrating me today or this week at Kapalua. Had a runner-up in 2022. Didn't he choke this one away at one point? I feel like he did. Let me look at it on a separate tab. I'm not going to share it. I'm just going to look real quick. Didn't he lose to Tim Clark here one time? Sony. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. What was that? What tournament was that? Was that a West Coast event? Anyway, he's been playing here since 2016. So Russell Henley likes this golf course for sure. Hideki. Look at that. Wow. Hideki. Well, I guess he won here in 2022. Although the course history is not really factored in here. I don't even know that I've noticed how he's been playing so far. Corey Connors, Terrell Hatton in here. Willie Z, I would imagine this is a little noisy too with Willie Z just because his most recent play goes all the way back to the match play outside of the Hero, and the Hero doesn't have any shot link data. Actually, neither does the match play, so it's all this stuff. That one's kind of noisy. I don't know that I would count that for much. Justin Rose, last played here in 2017. I'm guessing he's playing here because he's already over here, but he's chosen not to play since 2017. I don't think he's playing great right now in Kapalua. Aaron Rye is interesting. Look at a lot of green here for Aaron Rye. Obviously the approach numbers for him have been pretty solid. Played a little bit in the fall, but didn't do much. I mean, even the T21 at Zozo wasn't great. Played here back-to-back years and hasn't done great. Wow. Maybe the course history angle is going to get a lot of love. So, maybe if you play a guy that checks high on the model but doesn't have a lot of course history or good course history, that could be an interesting advantage. I mean, Eric Cole's going to continue to be popular in DFS, but might be a good bet. Shows up nicely here, but man, look at the rough tendency. Probably among some of the worst in the field. So if Eric Cole can avoid missing left on some of those key holes, he could be a lot of trouble. But he's going to be popular. That could be a great little nugget to fade him, and we'll see what happens. But if he can keep it out of the left rough, if he knows where to miss it out here, and he can keep that left miss out, it's going to be a potential good spot for Eric Cole. Haven't seen Gary Woodland since the Wyndham. He had brain surgery too, I believe. Right? Hope he's doing well. So he's going to be back. Tyler Duncan. Yikes! I can't stand. I don't understand Tyler Duncan. I've never got him right. But look at this horrible course history. Another one of these guys with bad course history that maybe if we buy into the BTN model could be nice. He definitely misses it. Doesn't miss it left. The putting is top tier. Gains some strokes with accuracy. The approach numbers are terrible. Jaeger, another guy who tends to miss it left. That might be the Bermuda side too. Not really good there. Jaeger, Cam Davis, JJ Spawn. See, JJ Spawn seems like a guy that would fit this place nicely. Comes here a lot, but doesn't do great. I guess last year's probably his best finish. I feel like JJ's kind of evolved as a player the last couple of years. Like I feel like you could throw out the 2020s and 2020, 19, 18 JJs. Ryan Moore, who didn't he play? Yeah, like Ryan Moore had a really good fall. He had a really good fall. He's played here twice in the last couple of years, missed the cut both times, but he might have found something. He's got our boy Austin Goggard on the bag. Ryan Moore could be interesting. He's a terrible putter, man. That's Alex Noren's back. Didn't he have he had a nice little fall run too. Could have won the Butterfield, Shriners. Interesting fall run. I like the Noren angle. I think he tends to spray it, but he might club down here. Luke List. List has never done well here. I mean, obviously this takes one of Luke's greatest weapons out of hand, and you're trying to trust the putter. I mean, I do think the putter's improved, but I think I'm out on Luke List here for sure. Grayson Sig going to make an appearance. Good to see old Siggy back. Good to see Siggy back. Chris Kirk's playing well in Kapalua right now. Got a good record here. Runner up in T3 in 2 out of the last 3 years. Playing well. That could be interesting. I like that. Ben Griffin, Postman's playing great. Excited about how JT's playing. Any other surprises in here? Alejandro Toasty. Look at Toast, man. That's probably very limited shot link data there. Fitzpatrick. Let's see who's down at the bottom, and then we'll get out of here. This is probably going to be a lot of the rookies that we don't have a lot of data on. Yeah, it is so far. Let's see. Tyson Alexander, we have data on. Camilo, huh? Camilo's. Well, it's because we don't have the shot link data stuff here. That's what's hurting him. But he's playing good too. KH Lee. We haven't seen him. Haven't seen him in a while. Who else? Matt Wallace, huh? Matt's playing all right though. Don't mind that. EVR, man. I mean, EVR was like ranked very highly or like top 20 in the model this past week for Kapalua. Bottom 20 here. But I mean, the approach numbers look good. We'll have to check out his putting numbers at Kapalua when the tournament ends to see if he's kind of figured something out or he's got a little bit of a hot putter at the moment. I wouldn't mind riding it. Patton Kazire, past champion here. He won here like in 2017. Hasn't done much since outside of 2021, 2019, not bad. Lost his full status in this past season. Didn't play well at Q school, but man, you'd love to see Patton kind of get back on it. Taylor Montgomery started to look like vintage Taylor Montgomery towards the end of the fall last year after kind of losing it. Played really well here because he's obviously an incredible putter, and the putter's been hot. Approach play's been what's killed him. Taylor Montgomery could be an interesting name. I hear that Mav McNeely is feeling good, and he's got a good record here last couple years, and I hear he's feeling good. Mav McNeely may be one to watch. All right, I think that's it for me. We're about 20 minutes in. Thanks for checking it out. We've got a ton of content coming this week, full slate of content coming. Hope everybody hits their bets for the Century Tournament of Champions and may your screens be green on DraftKings. All right, see you.